Story recap here. Today I'm going to explain a fantasy and western movie called Purgatory. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Black Jack Britton rides into the small town of Sweetwater with his right-hand man, Kevin Guthrie, and their gang. However, Black Jack notices Kevin's nephew Sonny showing off his gun skills to some boys, so he questions if the young man is worthy of being in the group. Because of this, Kevin reminds his nephew to act right. Black Jack then gathers his men to infiltrate the bank. There, he forces the teller to open the safe, and when he refuses, Black Jack shoots one of his fingers, forcing him to comply. Meanwhile, Sonny and a few others wait outside as lookouts. Suddenly, Sonny spots a woman named Dolly Sloan, a famous woman of the night featured in dime novels. He asks her to sign his copy when a troop of officers rides into town. Black Jack is alerted to the presence of the officers, so they hurry while the shooters from the rooftops prepare. A civilian tries to shoot Black Jack but gets killed, causing a commotion that alerts the officers. Black Jack and his men immediately get into an intense gunfight, and in the chaos, Dolly gets shot and dies in Sonny's arms. As the men escape, Black Jack's brother, Badger, gets shot as well. Nobody helps him except for Sonny. The men eventually escape the town with their loot. After learning that he lost two of his men, Black Jack pays it no mind and reminds everyone that they have a long journey ahead of them, and some might not make it. Hearing this, Badger assures his brother that he can keep up. Black Jack ends his speech by noting that whoever can't keep up will see him again in hell. Later on, the group realizes that a posse is pursuing them. Black Jack knows they can't stop, but Sonny argues that Badger needs to rest because of his injury. However, Badger reassures everyone that he can keep up, so they continue on their ride. As expected, Badger falls behind, so Sonny helps him. The next day, Badger's injury worsens, and he falls off his horse. Knowing he'll die soon, he asks his comrades to end his misery, but they refuse to waste their bullets. As the others leave, Badger tells Sonny to find a way out of their unlawful life since it's not like the dime novels he reads. He then reaches for Sonny's gun, and despite the young man not having shot anyone before, he ends Badger's agony. Hearing the gunshot, Kevin congratulates his nephew for having the guts to shoot someone, but Sonny isn't happy about it. Just then, Sonny gets shot in the leg, and the posse shows up from the cliff. Seeing this, Black Jack's men immediately flee, but the posse overruns them, starting a shootout. As they desperately make their escape, the horse carrying their loot gets shot. Black Jack tries to go back for it, but the posse is getting closer, so Kevin tells him it's not worth dying for. After escaping, Black Jack's heart sinks upon seeing his hard work go to waste. Later on, the group wanders through a sandstorm and follows a route that takes them through a tunnel. As they see the light, they're puzzled upon finding a luscious paradise. As they make their way through the strange place, they see a lone Indian near a gate that doesn't seem to cover anything. Later on, they discover a small town. Everyone stares at Black Jack and his men as they enter, but Sheriff Forrest welcomes them to the town of Refuge. Black Jack tells the sheriff that they're drovers, and the Apaches attacked them while they were moving their herd. Hearing this, the sheriff offers them to stable their horses, drinks at the saloon, and beds in their hotel. The men can hardly believe the charity, but don't refuse the offer. Black Jack asks if he can contact his supposed client using their telegraph office, but Forrest tells him that the town is not in contact with the outside world. After that, the sheriff summons Deputy Glenn to lead the men to their quarters, while a woman named Rose leads the wounded to the doctor. Before everyone leaves, the sheriff reminds everyone not to curse while they're in Refuge, except when in the saloon. Later, Sonny and a few wounded men go with Rose to the doctor's office. Sonny asks how long she's lived there, and she replies that it's been 5 years, 1 week, and 2 days. Soon, they're introduced to Dr. Woods. In the saloon, Black Jack tells his men that the men in town aren't armed, so it must be easy to loot. At the doctor's office, Sonny stares at the doctor, recognizing him from somewhere he can't remember. After getting treated, Rose accompanies him and asks how many men he's killed, which he finds odd. She also asks about their equipment, seeing that they didn't have as many ropes and branding iron as a group of drovers should have. He dodges these questions, so Rose walks away. But Sonny tries to redeem himself by confessing that he's only killed one man who begged him to do it. Still, Rose doesn't look back. Elsewhere, Forrest gathers his trusted men, Glenn, Woods, and the store owner, Brooks. They speculate that the strangers aren't drovers based on the bullets they extracted from the wounded. Forrest hopes they'll leave peacefully, but Glenn thinks they shouldn't have welcomed them to begin with. Later, Sonny joins Kevin in the saloon and gets congratulated for being a man. Just then, Black Jack spots Woods and introduces himself as Jack Smith. He invites the doctor for drinks, but he kindly refuses and leaves. Blackjack also notes that the man looks familiar but shrugs it off. Later that night, the bell tolls, and the townsfolk immediately flock to the church, including the saloon owner, who leaves the establishment to Blackjack and his men. The group concludes that the town is full of religious people, so Kevin comments that this job will be easy. Unaware of the plans, Sonny asks what he means, but Kevin just tells him it's none of his business. After the mass, Sonny approaches Rose and explains the man he shot was left to die, excusing his action as an act of mercy. He admits he wants to redeem himself because he likes her, getting Rose's attention. Just then, a drunk Kevin spots the two and berates Sonny for hogging a pretty woman's attention. Because of this, he punches Sonny and begins to corner Rose. Forrest steps in to protect her, but Kevin points a gun at him. Instead, Sonny gets back up and knocks his uncle out. Sonny asks if they'll put Kevin in jail, but Forrest responds that they don't have one. After Forrest takes Rose away, Blackjack approaches and asks what happened, but Sonny says he doesn't know. Forrest approaches Sonny the following day and asks him to tell Blackjack he wants to talk to him. Curious, Sonny asks how long he's been sheriff of the town, to which Forrest replies that it's been over 10 years. After Forrest leaves, Sonny opens his dime novel and realizes that the sheriff looks like Wild Bill Hickok, a famous gunfighter. Later, Blackjack goes to see Forrest, who kindly asks him to control his men, given Kevin's action towards Rose last night. Blackjack, however, points out that Kevin was also knocked down, though Forrest clarifies that he didn't see one of the townsfolk do it. Forrest kindly reminds him that the town has given them nothing but hospitality, so the men should at least keep themselves in check in return. Blackjack simply replies that his men will do whatever he tells them to. Blackjack then wonders why none of the men are armed, so Forrest explains that they never needed to do so, but they have their own ways. Meanwhile, Kevin and Sonny go to the store looking for ammo. To provide a distraction for Kevin, Sonny asks if the store has dime novels, which Brooks says he does, but only the classics. Only then does Kevin notice that Brooks looks like another famous outlaw, Jesse James. Their conversation is interrupted when Kevin drops a few things while he's pocketing ammo in his coat. Kevin distributes the bullets to their men, but they spot Brooks talking to the sheriff, likely having known that he was stealing. Tired of acting politely, Blackjack tells his men to get their way with the town. Moments later, the men race their horses on the streets and throw knives into the church doors. Seeing this, Forrest asks Blackjack to stop them, but he and his men ignore him. Determined to stop the chaos, Forrest stands before the church doors to block the men from throwing knives at it. Still, the men continue to throw knives until dark clouds gather over them. Before a man could throw another knife, he gets hit by lightning and dies. The rain starts, so everyone disperses. Once everyone is gone, the mysterious gatekeeper takes the fallen man's body and brings it to the gates outside of town. Later that night, Sonny falls asleep outside the church while waiting for Rose. He wakes up when a carriage arrives, and everyone from the church welcomes the new guest, who, to Sonny's surprise, is Dolly. Before leaving, the coachman hands a white rose to Forrest, saying he can come home on Sunday. Stunned, Forrest quietly takes the rose and smiles. Confused by what just happened, Sonny tries to chase the carriage as it leaves, but it disappears. The next day, Sonny confronts Forrest and Dolly, insisting that Dolly died in his arms back in Sweetwater. However, Dolly denies this, claiming her name is Ivy. When Sonny isn't convinced, Rose tells him to let it go. Coming up with an idea, Sonny follows Woods and calls out, "Holiday, draw." This triggers the doctor's reflexes, making him swiftly turn around as if to draw out a gun. Seeing this, Sonny is sure that he's Doc Holliday, a famous gunfighter and gambler, but Woods claims that anyone would have instinctively turned like that after getting called out. Still, Sonny is convinced the town is a place for famous outlaws to retire, concluding that Forrest is Wild Bill Hickok, Glenn is Billy the Kid, and Brooks is Jesse James. To challenge his claim, the doctor asks what kind of outlaw Rose is, but Sonny doesn't have an answer to it. He argues that, given their legendary skills, they shouldn't let Blackjack rule over them. However, he accidentally reveals their leader's true name, catching Wood's attention. Sonny pleads with him not to tell anyone, but the doctor warns the young man to make the right choice before he loses his soul. Later, Sonny goes to the farmer, whom he recognizes as Lefty Slade, another famous outlaw who supposedly died after getting shot in the chest and the left wrist. The farmer claims that his name is Lamb, but Sonny checks his left wrist and sees a bullet scar. This triggers the farmer to reveal himself as the real Lefty Slade. When Sonny recounts one of the stories from the novels, Lefty stresses that the novel writer never even spoke to him. Before Sonny can ask more questions, some of Blackjack's men destroy Lefty's garden. Enraged, Lefty beats one of the men with a shovel, killing him. Realizing what he's done, he yells and cries in regret. The other townsfolk go up to him, seeing what he'd done. Lefty mourns over the last 8 years, regretting his actions. Soon, they see the gatekeeper waiting for him in the distance. With one last look of goodbye to his neighbors, Lefty joins the gatekeeper. Hoping to get some answers, Sonny watches the two men enter the misty gates, only for the gatekeeper to return alone seconds later. Meanwhile, the men continue to wreak havoc on Refuge, so Forrest calls out Blackjack's real name, telling him to leave the town with his men. Instead, Blackjack attempts to attack the sheriff, but Forrest easily dodges him. After a few failed attempts, Blackjack aims his pistol at Forrest, but the ground begins to shake, scaring him. Once the earthquake stops, Blackjack rounds up his men into the saloon. Sonny soon arrives, but Kevin refuses to let him in. Sonny instead sneaks through the back door and learns that the men are leaving town by sunrise. Blackjack tells him to take whatever they want and kill anyone who resists. So Kevin declares that Rose is off limits because she's his to claim. Hearing this, Sonny searches for Rose and finds her swimming at the lake. After she gets dressed, Sonny notices the bruise around her neck. Recalling Lefty's scars, he realizes that this must be how she died. Rose painfully admits that she was the first woman to be hanged in the Arizona territory. With this, Sonny identifies her as Betty McCullough, who hacked her father to death with a meat cleaver. Rose adds that everyone forgot how her father touched her since she was 12. Sonny realizes that Refuge is where people like her get a second chance, but Rose clarifies that it's actually their last chance. Sonny offers to stay with her, warning her that the others will destroy the town. Rose isn't afraid of this, since the town has been through worse than dying. Still, she agrees to tell Forrest. Rose mournfully tells Sonny that she wishes they'd met at a different time. Sonny moves close to kiss her, but Rose rejects his advances. That night, Sonny joins the townsfolk at church. There, he learns that Refuge is a form of purgatory, and if they can resist the urges from their past lives for 10 years, they'll be welcomed into heaven. One mistake can doom them for eternity. Forrest has less than 24 hours before entering heaven, so he's been patient with Blackjack and his men. Hearing this, Sonny becomes disappointed that they won't fight. He walks out, but is greeted by blows from Blackjack and Kevin. Everyone listens to him getting beaten outside, but they can't get involved, lest they doom their souls. They merely watch until the two men leave Sonny unconscious. They later take Sonny to be treated in Wood's office. When he wakes up, Forrest apologizes for not being able to help him. Sonny admits that he understands, but he's willing to take all of Blackjack's men to protect them. Once they're alone, Rose kisses him. The next day, Sonny gets ready to face the men by himself despite his weakened state. Rose and the rest tell him not to do it, but he insists. Just then, the bell rings, and the townsfolk enter the church. As Dolly pulls Rose into the church, Sonny confesses his love for her. Meanwhile, Forrest decides to stay behind. He realizes that, for 10 years, he only thought about himself, yet Sonny inspired him to fight for the others. Woods points out that he has 5 hours left until he ascends to heaven, but Forrest discards the rose the coachman gave him and arms himself up. Inspired to do the same, Glenn and Brooks also stand to fight, choosing to save their home instead of salvation. Seeing this, Blackjack readies his men and commands them to burn down the houses. Meanwhile, Sonny and his gang boldly approach and give Blackjack one last chance. One of Blackjack's men tries to shoot them from behind, only for Woods to save them. Just then, the horses from the stables escape, and the gunfight ensues, with the former gunslingers quickly picking off the gang. However, Sonny can't bring himself to shoot his uncle, allowing Kevin to shoot him in the arm. Eventually, Glenn tackles a man off the horse and beats him. He then plays dead on the ground while secretly reloading his pistol to shoot the enemy up close. Soon, they kill most of Blackjack's men, and the place falls quiet. Rose runs out of the church and into Sonny's arms, but Kevin appears and shoots him. Although Sonny manages to shoot him down, he also gets hit in the chest. Confused, Sonny realizes that he feels no pain as if he's not dying. With this, Forrest realizes that Sonny earned his second chance, so he welcomes him to Refuge. Just then, Blackjack appears and calls out Forrest's real name, recognizing his skills. He challenges him to a one-on-one gunfight, but Forrest quickly shoots him. Since he doesn't feel pain, Blackjack smiles, thinking he's one of them now. But Forrest shoots him in the head, refusing to let him join their town. After this, the gatekeeper arrives to take Blackjack and Kevin's bodies. He walks through the misty gates until he reaches a pit filled with fiery lava. There, he dumps their bodies, and they scream in agony as they hit the blazing flames. Back in the gates, Forrest, Woods, Glenn, and Brooks prepare to follow the gatekeeper. However, the coachman suddenly arrives and invites the men to go home. explaining that the creator may be tough, but he's not blind. Realizing that their sacrifice finally earned them a spot in heaven, the four men enter the carriage. The coachman also invites Sunny to join, because he has nothing left to prove. Although he's grateful, he chooses to stay to be with Rose. Hearing this, Forrest hands him his badge and appoints him as Refuge's new sheriff. Soon, the carriage takes Forrest, Woods, Glenn, and Brooks into heaven, finally reaching their salvation.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.